This is a recording of a discussion of the subjunctive clause sentences in which you have the various different subjunctive uses, and number one is Pompeius verebatur ne milo in exilium mitteretur. So that's the one that I'll be going over now. So for the first one, I'm going to translate the sentence and talk about anything that might be of interest. So Pompey verebatur. Verebatur is the verb vere or vereri, vere to assume, meaning to be afraid or to fear. So he, Pompey, feared, was fearing, nay. Now whenever you have a ut or a nay, you have to go look and see if you have a subjunctive verb. We do with mitteretur. Mitteretur is the infinitive mittere with an ending, making it an imperfect subjunctive. Thus, the fact that it is introduced by a fearing word, it is what we know of as a fear clause. And when it comes to fear clauses, the ut and the nay are switched, in that ut, usually positive, now becomes negative, and nay, usually negative, now becomes positive. So Pompey feared that Milo would be sent, might be sent, was being sent. We are in secondary sequence by the fact that verebatur is the introducing verb of the imperfect, and when you have an imperfect subjunctive mitteretur, it is action that is either happening at the same time or afterwards. That's why you could say would be sent for afterwards, or at the same time was being sent into exile. Milo here is nominative milo milonis, in which obviously it's the variant third declension. Alright, moving on to number two. Augustus erat princeps tantae virtutis. Augustus was an emperor. Tantae virtutis is the genitive of characteristic. If you say that she is an athlete of great speed is giving the characteristic, telling you what kind of athlete she is. So therefore here we're talking about what kind of emperor he was, and we use the genitive of great virtue. Virtutis here is a third declension word, virtus, which has a long us, but it's not an ending in the nominative, it's the variant, and then virtutis. And of course the tantae here tells you that that third declension word is indeed feminine. So Augustus was an emperor of such great virtue, ut, there. You see the ut, and you need to go and see if you have a subjunctive. You go and look at your verb, and indeed you do with laudaret. It is an imperfect subjunctive again. And so we have an ut clause of some sort. The tantae that you see in the first part of the clause that introduces it lets us know that this is a result clause. Remember, the result clauses are the your mama jokes, and in every single your mama joke in English you will use two words, the word so and the word that. The word so is seen in the word tantae, so much. So an emperor of such great virtue, of so much virtue. And then of course the ut is going to be that. And then you imply, as a result, Paterculus, who is the name of a historian, laudaret, praised him, maxime, very greatly. It is a superlative. Moving on to number three. Number three is our first encounter on this page of the independent use of the subjunctive. You see it in the form of fiat. You go and look at the imperfect, or I should say irregular verbs that I have. Fio, fieri, factus sum is an irregular verb, but it really functions as the passive of the verb facio, facere. And here, fiam, fias, fiat is the subjunctive, not to be confused with fio, fis, fit, which would be the indicative. So here we are not in any subordinate clause. And remember, there are four reasons as to why a verb would be a subjunctive verb in an independent clause. It would be either showing a jussive or hortatory, in which that's translate let the subject verb or may set the subject verb, a deliberative, asking a deliberative question, and so it's asking a direct question, should the subject verb. Then you have an impossible wish, also known as a volative or optative, but you would see the word utinam, which we don't have here, or it could be a potential subjunctive, in which obviously you would use the words might or would because it's potential instead of an indicative. Here, this is the jussive subjunctive, so called because our verbs fiat, which is subjunctive, and then patiatur, which both fiat and patiatur are connected by the que on the Roma que in the middle of the sentence. And so we have a compound sentence here, which is of course a sentence that has two independent clauses connected by a conjunction. So let peace fiat, let peace be made, let peace happen, let peace be done, let peace become, let peace go down, or you could colloquially, as we see it in the Bible with lux fiat, let there be peace, in the way that it says in Genesis, let there be light. So, let peace happen, let there be peace, let peace be made in imperio, in the empire, Romaque, and let Rome. Roma here is again the subject of patiatur. Let Rome, numquam iterum, never again, patiatur, suffer, endure, patior, pati, possessum, we fear a giant liar. Let Rome never again suffer another alium bellum civiles, civil war. Now here particularly a very tricky thing could be civile. Civile is the third declension adjective, civilis, civilis, civile. And when people see civile, they would think that it would be ablative, but it is not, because ablative would have the I stem I. And here that E ending, is actually a fake ending that the neuter I stem tries to prove that it has an ending in both the nominative and accusative. Here accusative because it's modifying bellum, the direct object, which is neuter. Number 4, Princeps Augustus orat. The Emperor Augustus begs orat, the senators. Orat, if you look on your study guide for ut clauses, is of course, commandy word. It is of oro, orare, orata sum, and so therefore it is introducing this ut clause, which does have a subjunctive verb, dent, do, dare, dedi, datus, we, fair giant liar. And so here it is the indirect command. And so the direct command would be, give help to the state, give help to the citizenry. But here it is being reported that Augustus begs the senators that they give help to the state. Civitati is in the dative case, and it is from the noun civitas, civitatis, which is the group of citizens in a political unit, and so therefore we translate it as the citizenry or the state. Please know that when you see civitas, the tas is not an ending as, but rather it is the variant. Number 5. The Senate will give dabit, and so therefore we are here in primary sequence, more of the authority, plus auctoritatis being a genitive part of the whole, to Octavian, he's the indirect object receiving the plus, so the Senate will give more of the authority to Octavian quo. This is, of course, a relative from qui, qua, quod, cuius, quic, quim, quam, quod, quo, qua, quo. Cases matter. So therefore you have to translate it by which, or with which, he deponat, which is a deponent verb, or not deponent verb, I'm sorry. It is a subjunctive verb. It is from pono pundere, so we fear a giant liar, so with which he may put down, with which he could put down, with which he will put down, you could even say, seeing as a present subjunctive, as the subordinate verb will have action either at the same time as dabit in the future or after dabit, which is also then going to be more future. And then here you have novas res. For the Romans, the word novus means new, but when it is paired up with res, new things for the Romans are always bad. They are an insular group, and so therefore revolution is what it's going to mean. So with which he may put down revolution in the empire. So here we have to know why deponat is a subjunctive verb, and it's obviously in a subordinate clause, the relative clause. And so here what you are dealing with is a clause either telling us that it is the kind of authority with which, that would be the relative clause of characteristic, or it could be giving us the purpose of the authority, or it could be giving us the result of the more authority. And here I would argue it is the purpose, and so therefore we could easily replace the quo with an ut, and therefore that would now turn into an ut purpose clause. It is the purpose of the more of the authority, so that, or with which, he may put down revolution in the empire. Number 6. Number 6 starts off with, excuse me, an ablative absolute. Remember that an ablative absolute is a phrase that takes the place of a subordinate clause. It is going to usually involve a noun in the ablative, bello, and either a participle, gesto here being the perfect passive participle, or another noun or adjective. Here it is always with perfect, or I should say, with ablative absolutes, with war having been waged. Gero, gerere, gessi, gestus. It means to wear, it means to wage, it means to accomplish, it means to govern even, depending upon with what it is paired. When it is paired with bellum, it is always going to mean to wage. So with war having been waged, cum, and thus I have to see if Octavianus is in the ablative. It is not. I look to my verb venisset. It is a subjunctive. So then I know that I'm dealing with either a circumstance, a cause, or a concession. And so I look for the tamen in the other clause. I do not see one, so it's either going to be when, the circumstance, or since, the cause. Translate it both and see which one makes more sense. So when Octavian had come to Rome, venisset, because it is a pluperfect subjunctive, he asked, rogavit, all the senators, quid, what they had done in Gaul. Here, with both venisset and egisset, we are the pluperfect subjunctives in secondary sequence, and so inevitably, if it is before something already in the past, it is going to have to be expressed past, which is appropriate for the pluperfect. I would argue that the cum clause here is the cum circumstances, because whatever the circumstances are when Octavian had arrived to Rome, then it is that circumstances that he asked all the senators. Now, the second agiset is an indirect question verb. The question would be, what had they done in Gaul? But that's not being asked. Instead, it's being reported to us and thus stated, he asked all the senators what they had done in Gaul. Number 7. Number 7 is relatively easy to deal with because it has the word utinam. Utinam is going to signal an impossible wish, and thus you can translate the utinam either as if only or would that. And you translate then the verbs, regat in this case from rego, regere, a third conjugation with an a, we fear a giant liar. You just translate it as though it's a regular old present. You may use any of those subjunctive words to help it, of course, flow in English. And then the same thing with habuiset, which is also the verb of the utinam, the volative or optative impossible wish. And so, would that Augustus rule in perpetuum, in perpetuity, in other words, away forever. So, would that he does, would that he would that he, is ruling, or if only Augustus. And you could use a word like could if you wanted. And then again with the utinam, if only Rome always semper had so great, tantum principum, an emperor. And habuiset, of course, is pluperfect, so had, because the verb in and of itself, habe or habere, means to have, and so therefore, if you're making it pluperfect, had. Number 8. Octavianus Antonium principum esse, qui rem publicam non bene regeret, scivit. So here we have 3 clauses, the first of which is Octavianus down to scivit. Then you have an indirect statement, which always has an accusative subject and an infinitive verb, Antonium principum esse. And then you have a third clause, qui rem publicam non bene regeret. You can see the regeret right next to the scivit, and thus that tells you can have 2 finite verbs right next to each other, and so one of them is in the interior clause being governed by the subordinating word qui. So Octavian knew, scivit, perfect tense, that, and that's what the word you use to introduce an indirect statement, that Antonius was an emperor, or was a top dog, since we are not during the empire, so he was a first citizen. And I'm translating esse as was, because as a present infinitive, it must occur at the same time as the verb of mental action. Scivit is perfect tense, and so therefore you must make esse also happen in the past. So Octavian knew that Antony was the top citizen, qui, who, non bene regeret, who would not rule the res publica bene, well. Now, the regeret here is an imperfect subjunctive, rego, regere, and it, of course, is now in a subordinate clause, that is a relative clause, and so it's either saying that he is the kind of first citizen, or the purpose of the first citizen who, or the result of the first citizen who. I would argue here that it is telling us the relative clause that shows characteristic, because it is indeed telling us he's not the specific principum who would not rule well, but rather he's the kind. Number 9. Cicero ad Atticum inquit. Cicero says to Atticus. Now, these 2 sentences are tricky. First and foremost, you have velum. That is the present subjunctive of volo, vele, volui. It is a main clause verb. And so again, it is going to be either the gessive / hortatory, the deliberative, the volative optative, in other words, impossible wish, or the potential. You can eliminate the middle 2 because it's 1, not asking a direct question, and 2, it doesn't have the word utinam, so it's either let me want, or it shows the potential I might want, and that's exactly what it's doing here. Now, velum would require a direct object, so instead you could say I might want candy, or if you're talking about dinner, I might want a chicken sandwich, I might want a hamburger. But here we have, instead of a traditional direct object accusative, the phrase longiores epistolas mitas. Mitas is a subjunctive verb. We fear a giant liar, mito, mitere. And so therefore, with the ut missing, which often it is in real Latin, this is an ut clause with the ut missing that reduces the whole clause, the whole phrase, into being a noun. In this case, the direct object of what I might want. I might want that, ut implied, you send longer letters. Thus, what we have when you see the longiores epistolas mitas, the whole action of you sending longer letters is what I would want. Semper opus est scribas. Opus est is an impersonal verb. It is just like necesse est or licet or portet, in which the subject is it. or there is. But truly, when you have an impersonal verb, the subject is going to be an action, sometimes expressed as an infinitive, other times expressed as a subjunctive verb, and that's what you have with skribos, from the verb skribo, scribere, which means here we fear a giant liar. So always opus est, it is necessary. Always opus est, there is need. You can translate opus est either way, that you write. And so therefore it becomes the subject of opus est. You writing is the necessary thing. You writing is the need. And so therefore scribos here is your subjunctive that is also functioning as a substantive noun clause. Number 10, cum Octavianus, and then you go to your verb after you've determined that Octavianus not in this or not an ablative. Appellaritur is from the verb appello appellare, which means to name or to call. And so we do have a subjunctive, and we look and see the tamen in the other clause, and it's right there. So now we know that this cum is translated although, and the appellaritur is telling us a concession because it is the cum adversative / concessive clause with the tamen confirmed. So although Octavian was called Augustus by the Senate, nevertheless, senatus ad hoc, the Senate still, gessit, governed, that's what gero, gerere, gessus means when it is taken with the word imperium, governed the empire in civitate, in the citizenry, or in the state. Nevertheless, appellaritur, again, is a subjunctive verb, imperfect, in a concessive clause. Number 11. Rome always will have habebit, peace, dumodo. Dumodo is one of the easiest clauses to recognize, a proviso clause, giving us a provision. Dumodo translates, of course, as provided that. Provided that Augustus regat, from rego, regere, we fear a giant liar, provided that Augustus rules. So provided, that is the provision, that Augustus rules, Rome always will have peace. Number 12. Cicero feared. Cicero was afraid. Metuo metuere. Now, of course, it's introducing a fear clause. Ne bellum inter Caesarem Pompeiumque fieret, where you confirm that the ne has the subjunctive verb fieret, which is an imperfect subjunctive. This verb fio fieri does not have a present active infinitive to form the imperfect subjunctive, but when you don't have one, make one up. And of course we can, and we have here. So Cicero feared that. Remember that with a fear clause, the ut and the ne are switched. That war, fieret, would happen between Caesar and Pompey. Bellum here functioning as your subject of that verb fieret, because bellum is a neuter word, second declension. Quid de paratis faciamus, ia, except for when it's followed by the letter m as an ending or the letter r as an ending, ia is guaranteed subjunctive, and that's what we have here. We fear a giant liar, and it's asking a question, so therefore we automatically know it is the deliberative subjunctive. What should we do? De peratis, about pirates. Deliberations in English use the word should, so you use the word should in your translation. De musne. De musne comes from do dare dedidatus, and so de musne, the e of demus, tells us that it is, of course, a present subjunctive. We fear a giant liar for this first conjugation verb. And so ne merely indicates the question, should we give the power to Pompeo, against the pirates? And again, it shows the deliberation. We use the word in English, should. Number 14. Antonius and Octavian, pugnaverant, fought between themselves, ut constituerent. So this is going to be a purpose clause because, one, it's not showing a result. There's not one of those so words. It's not going to be an indirect question, doesn't have a commandy word. There's no fear involved, and it is not functioning as the subject or object, that ut clause of the verb pugnaverant. We already have a subject that's Antony and Octavian. And so here, the verb constituerant comes from constituo constituere, which means to decide. So Antony and Octavian fought between themselves so that they might decide, so that they could decide, so that they would decide, quis orbem terrarum regnaret. Again, I've goofed up on subject-verb agreement in that quis is singular, and thus you need to take out the n of regnaret. This is another verb that means to rule, regno, regnare, and so therefore it's nothing more than an infinitive plus an ending imperfect subjunctive, so that they might decide who would rule the ball of the lands, orbem terrarum. So orbem terrarum is just a term that means the world. You have two subjunctive verbs here, constituerant, an imperfect subjunctive showing a purpose, why they fought between themselves, and the quis down to the regnaret is going to be an indirect question. The question would be who would rule the world, and thus it is being reported so that they might decide who would rule the world. Number 15. Cum Cleopatra et Antonius vicindy. This is the cum temporal clause. I can immediately tell because Cleopatra is not in the ablative, and then vicindy is obviously an indicative verb. Here, however, it is shown as a future passive periphrastic, which, of course, when you take the gerundive, vicindy in this instance, and pair it with the form of the verb to be, it shows obligation. So, when Cleopatra and Antony must be conquered, venco, vencere, vici victus, Octavian and Agrippa fought them eos at Actium. So here, there are no subjunctive verbs in number 15. Number 16, Caesar governed the empire at Rome. Again, gero, gerere, gessi, gestus with imperium means govern. So that we have another ut clause that shows purpose. Same reasoning as before. There's not one of those so words like adio or tom or tantus or things like that. It's not a commandy word. Guess it is not. It's not a fear word, and so it's showing the purpose of why he governed at Rome. So he governed the empire at Rome so that, and again, my subject-verb agreement is terrible. Take out the N of regnarent. It should be regnaret, so that he would rule the whole world. And then it jumps to Octavian. So at first, this is before Octavian becomes Augustus and the emperor while he's with the second triumvirate. So at first, Octavian ruled the empire, governed the empire, imperium gessit, at Rome, ad regnandum. Here, ad, or if it were with a genitive, causa, or with a genitive, gratia. When it is with a gerund or a gerundive, which regnandum is, from regno regnare, it shows purpose. And so here, as a gerund, because it's not modifying anything, for the purpose of ruling in Italy. And that is true, because when he was a part of the second triumvirate, he was not the ruler of the world. The three of them divided the world between them. He's the one that ended up with Italy. And so therefore, for the purpose of ruling in Italy. Number 17. Octavian tam clemens erat. Octavian was so merciful. Tam is one of those so words, and then the ut, which does have the subjunctive verb posent. So therefore, it is showing us the result. Octavian was so merciful that the senators non posent were not able, occidere eum, to kill him, ut Caesarem. Ut, you always look for the subjunctive, and when there's not one, and there is not one here, you'll translate it as. So that it says again, Octavian was so merciful that the senators were not able to kill him as Caesar. So what's being left out after the ut is as occidere posent, as they were able to kill, and then Caesar as the direct object. So those are all of the sentences in a nutshell. Sorry if this took a little bit longer than what I thought, but nevertheless 20 minutes as a review.